Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay, a podcast focusing on meditation, the near-death experience, and all things spiritual.
I do enjoy the platform. It's more on a small group, team level, or individual basis. Yeah.
A lot of people come to you and say, "I want to find meaning and purpose in my career or the work that I want to do."
Yeah, they are for a variety of reasons. Either the organization that they're in, for example, either they joined the organization with an expectation about what their career path would look like and what degree or level the organization would commit to them in terms of their learning and development, or they and they were misled, or it wasn't what they'd hoped it would be. The culture wasn't really as supportive as they thought, or they just simply a round peg in a square hole and feel like they're ready to move on. They're ready for something more. They see within themselves, they see a desire to move, grow, learn, improve, and they're not quite sure how to do that. These days, the younger generation, if I could speak like that as an old man, their shelf life is 2 to 4 years before they're thinking of moving on to another job. Career-wise, they're thinking maybe 5 if I'm lucky, that I can grow to the point where I'm ready to make a transition in my career, maybe from a supervisory level to a management or leadership position, something like that, or even change disciplines or industries altogether, taking their skills with them. So yeah, they'll come to me and say, I feel lost is one of the common expressions. I feel like I'm not fulfilling my potential. I feel like I'm not being appreciated. I'm not getting a chance to grow. Or they're saying, I've lost the excitement of what I do. I'm not waking up in the morning pumped and excited to go to work. I feel like I need something different, a different direction. So from a Christian perspective, I'm trying very much to keep them earthed in spiritual principles and biblical principles, but at the same time, temper that with the reality of 21st century workforce dynamics and the global economy or whatever. Throw into the mix the remote working and hybrid models. People are beginning to recognize that they have something to offer outside of a physical location, and therefore can work globally or can work cross-sectionally, if you like, or regionally. The problem with Americans is, no offense to all of us in America, is that we're very poor on cultural awareness and language, for example. Many of my coaching clients are from the Middle East or from Central Asia or from Europe, and they speak 2 or 3 languages and have a lot of cultural experience. So they have a much broader perspective about what the possibilities are for their career and to find their purpose and meaning and direction. So I do this. I'm not only in the Christian arena, but I'm also in the so-called secular arena as well.
I spent several years of my life stressed, anxious, and depressed. I needed to find something that would make my life work. For me, that was meditation. With meditation, I found the peace of mind that I was looking for. I found the happiness, and I found a way to improve every area of my life, my emotional life, my spiritual life, my relationships. I was able to discover things about myself. I can give you the tools to meditate. I will walk you through the process and hold your hand. Whether you're a beginner to meditation who's never meditated, or whether you're someone who's tried meditation and it just never seemed to work, we can make it work. Meditation is something that everyone can do, and I can show you how. Check out my course on meditation. You started off as a pastor, didn't you?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you have training in ministry.
Yeah, I'm an ordained minister, originally ordained in the Church of England in South Africa, which was effectively was there. Then it was called. It was in the middle of the apartheid era, so it was called the Church of the Province, which was essentially British Anglicanism. So Episcopalian, I think, is closest thing. But then I transitioned out of that to working for another denominational group, and we planted ourselves or declared ourselves to be non-racial and non-denominational in the heat of apartheid, which meant my phone was tapped and I was followed because I was breaking the law by having fellowship or by connecting with people not of my race. So that was how I got my start, although I'm also have pastored in England. And also, I was a co-pastor of a church in Dubai most recently, about 6 years ago.
So are you?
Well, I was working, but I was Go ahead, sorry.
Well, I mean, you sound like you're American, right?
Yes, I am born American, but I have a British passport and residency visas in 3 other countries.
Oh,
But I'm born and bred U.S. Yeah.
yeah. So, how did you get to South Africa?
It's kind of an interesting story that many people outside the U.S. don't get, because their perception of small town USA is that it's overtly, obviously, demonstrably Christian. But I was born and raised in a little village in upstate New York. We had 1,250 people when I was growing up. We still don't have a traffic light. My mom and dad were teachers in the school, and I had my mother 3 times and my father 4 times, my uncle once. But having said all that, I never attended church. I never went to Sunday school. I never held a Bible in my hand. I never heard even the simplest of messages about Jesus or the gospel. So with that backdrop, I was also president of the school and captain of a lot of the clubs and an academic scholar and all the rest of it. And I qualified as a Rotary Exchange student in my final year in high school. And they offered me Bolivia or South Africa. And so because I knew people from South Africa who had come to our village as an exchange student, I decided to go to Cape Town. When I arrived in Cape Town, I decided that the boy voted most likely to succeed with all the academic and other records and accolades was going to let his hair down, and I did my rebellious thing. And the school, I was put in a private boys' school, and the Rotary Club and the parents, the first family that I stayed with, kind of had a discussion apparently about sending me home. I was such a problem child. Wise guy, smart ass, whatever other language you might want to use, I was it. But finally, they decided to send me to a Christian camp. I didn't know what that meant. All I know is when they gave me the brochure, it said Bible, devotions, Christian, and sport. So I can do the sport. But I told my host family very clearly, they must keep their religious mitts off me. I'm not interested. I didn't even know what Christianity was. So, I mean, it was kind of just me being a hard-nosed sort of kid. When they took me to I'll never forget this, they took me to the bus station, the commandant, to go to the camp with all the other boys. The commandant, as they called him, was a famous lawyer in Cape Town, taking a week off to work with teenagers. And I went to him, and I got right up in his face, and I just said, look, you're going to stay away from me. Just keep your religious hands off me. I'm not interested in Bible, prayer, or anything else. Stay away. When he was interviewed by a friend of mine for a book I'm writing at the moment, he described me as a very angry young man. So long story short, the Baptist minister, I think he was Baptist, who looked after our tent with about 8 other kids, I think he wanted to quit the ministry by the time Wednesday rolled around because I was such an awkward cuss. But came Thursday night, and I'll tell you, this is the last part of that part of the story. The commandant, the lawyer, he talked about the gospel and Jesus as if it were real, as if it was historical, and I never heard of this. I had no idea, and it touched my heart in a way that I thought, well, this is interesting. I really should do something about this maybe. It was no like altar call or anything like that. But I went to him afterwards privately, and I wanted to just simply say thank you. That was a great message. And instead, I grabbed him by the lapels of his jacket, and I shook him violently, screaming in his face, tears streaming down my cheeks. saying, why has no one ever told me this before? This is the most amazing news I've ever heard. Why has no one ever told me? I've never heard of it. Tell me more. Anyway, long story short, he took me aside and talked with me, prayed with me, followed up with me the following weekend. And that was the beginning of my discovery of where my priorities should lie in terms of my future, in terms of my own career. Not career wasn't in the equation at that point, but that's when I began to think there's a new compass in my life, and I don't know what it means yet, but I just know it's a factor in terms of how I plan my life. And the last thing about this is, while I was there, I played baseball. The owner of the Detroit Tigers watched me play in an all-star game. In the press box afterwards, he asked me if I would come to Tiger Town for spring training, which was amazing. I got a sight unseen full scholarship at Ohio University. In that summer when I got back, I was offered a position to play at the Baseball Academy in Kansas City, and I got turned down for the draft. And I didn't need to go to Vietnam. So what did I do? I packed my bags and went back to South Africa to do youth work and play baseball. So that's how I ended up in South Africa. And later studied there, got married there, had a son there, and went into the ministry there. I was there for 13 years.
So did the government go as far as to prohibit integration even within churches? Because like even during segregation in the South, the churches themselves could do whatever they wanted, because there was some Pentecostal churches that were integrated in the Deep South. But did they actually prohibit integration
in South Africa? No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there were 3 or 4 categories of people. First of all, just to get that straight, there was everybody had a book of life. I even had one. In there was your driver's license, your race definition, your gun license, and every other thing that you might have that required a license was in the book of life. There was there were whites, there were so-called coloreds, which was mixed race, and then there were blacks, which made up about 7 or 8 different tribes like Xhosa, Zulu, and so on. And then there was the Asian group, which were honorary whites. Now, for example, I went to the conference, the mini conference to be considered for selection to go for training for ordination, there was another black guy there and his wife who were officially Xhosa tribe. They lived in a township not far from where we lived, but we were not legally allowed to go and visit them, and they couldn't come and stay in our home for more than 12 hours. I had to get police permission to visit them in the township. But another interesting thing about that, we became good friends, and when I offered to drive him and his wife, home to their township, he said his first question was, "What kind of car do you drive?" And I said, "Well, it's an old beat-up Ford, 66 Ford." He said, "Okay, that's fine. You can bring us." Because if I drove something expensive, he would be labeled by people within their community that he's associating with a rich white guy. Long story short, when we dropped them off at their house in the township, which I didn't get permission to do, we kissed each other, hugged each other goodbye, and Michael, his name was, he whispered in my ear, he said, "You've just been labeled." And from that day forward, our phone was tapped. And all calls that I made to either so-called colored people, for example, the principal of the local school in another township, or Michael himself, our phones were tapped. When we finally declared ourselves non-denominational, non-racial, it was interesting that while the people in our church, who were our fellowship, who were all white, of course, were welcoming of any nationality, any color, if you like, there were no buses laid on for people from the black township to come into the white area to attend church. And I couldn't take a group with me to go into the black township to have a meeting. So there was a lot of restriction in that regard. So we declared ourselves open, but we couldn't actually practice. It was By the way, just to mention, when I went out on the baseball contract to South Africa, one of the terms and conditions was that I would be prepared to teach, coach, and play baseball in the so-called colored townships, and which we did. Excuse me, which was illegal. But we continued to do it, and we suffered no ill effect from that, or no arrests or anything. Now I've noticed after the so-called collapse of apartheid in '92, all the baseball teams are mixed race now, and there, of course, the restrictions on marriage, the restrictions on location, the restrictions on transportation have all been lifted since those days. But back in the day, in the '70s and '80s, it was pretty gruesome, pretty tough.
So it was even more pervasive than what you would have found even in the Deep South, prior to the 60s.
Oh, absolutely, because it was enshrined in law. It was enshrined in law. I mean, a good friend of mine at our church who looked in this, and I'm going to be really saying probably something that will offend now. In the summer, he looked much darker. He looked like a so-called colored person because of the heat of the sun and being outside. But yet he was declared white because his grandfather was white officially and his grandmother was colored officially. But because the grandfather was technically white, or officially white, he got to carry a white birth book of life. But that said, whenever he got onto buses in the summer, the drivers would make him sit at the back. Even though he could flash his book of life, they wouldn't believe him, and he just found himself ostracized and segregated against in all areas of life. So we made a point of hanging out together to make so that he felt like he was one of us, and it was a really awkward time in those days. But you have signs everywhere: whites only, non-whites only. In Afrikaans, nie blankes, net nie blankes. And that's how you lived your life. And the drinking fountains were segregated. It wasn't just in the Deep South like it was here historically, but there it was. The bathrooms, everything, the transportation, housing, where you could live, where you could walk, how late you could stay up, were all governed by law. It was enshrined in law, very, very strict.
So getting back to finding meaning and purpose, if someone comes to you and says they want to work remotely, and maybe they're like writing or doing online courses or something, and they feel very fulfilled doing that, but they don't have a large audience or aren't making a lot of money, what can you tell them to help them?
I'm going to sidestep it just for a moment, and then I'll get back to it. Over the last, let me see, when did we go? 2008. So in the last 15 years, almost 12 years, 14 years, I've worked in and out of the Middle East, for example. And I do a lot of training, coaching, consulting. I was based out there. I was an executive in a big oil and gas company there. But when I came back here, finding work in the area in Missouri was difficult. So I ended up going back and forth all the time, and often for years. But what was interesting is if I had a particularly good training course, delivered a particularly good course, I feel I'm good at that. I like doing that, but the pay wasn't brilliant unless I got lots of work. And if I got lots of work, it meant staying in the Middle East for prolonged periods of time, which I didn't want to do. Coming back and forth, the benefit was I get to come home, but the negative flip side of that is you don't earn a lot of money doing that. So interesting, though, that when I did have what I would regard as a successful course, and I would come home, and after a couple of days, I'm exhausted. It's an 70-hour round trip. I've been delivering intensively. I'm passionate about what I do. But I come back, and after a couple of days, my family would say something, not exactly these words, but to the effect, Dad, we really think you ought to go away more often. I go, well, thanks a lot. He said, no, what we mean is you obviously are tired, but you obviously had a good time. You obviously are happy with what you did, and therefore, and we like this guy. we like your tone, we like your attitude, we like the level of you're good, you're comfortable in your own skin. Yeah, but I didn't make a lot of money. Well, we kind of like the guy. We're not so concerned about the money. So back to your question, I'm trying to, finding that work-life balance, that passion, skill balance, finding the difference between what you really love to do and what you're good at. You may be technically good at fixing things, but you don't want to spend your life fixing things. My dad was a great carpenter, for example, but he loved school teaching. He didn't like building houses, but he could. So if somebody says to me, I would like to do online work, writing, podcasting, coaching, whatever it might be, the phrase that I think I've maybe become a little bit famous for is don't boil the ocean. Let's boil a couple of teacups. If doing those things that you really want to do and you really love to do, you have a passion for, and you want to develop skill for, later it might result in actual income that scratches those itches. Let's not try to create a business from it. Let's just chip away, teacup at a time. Don't boil the ocean. Let's and especially build around you a team of people who can speak into your life to comment on whether or not you're good at it. What are the areas you can improve in? Because if you really are passionate about writing or whatever the other media or online work might be, if you get a buzz from it, and people recognize that you get a buzz from it, and people speak into your life and say, that was good, that's going to do everything for me to want me to do more. But if I try to do too much too soon, either I don't have the technology, I don't have the opportunity, and it certainly doesn't pay the bills, well, then it's going to be a recipe for frustration. So boil some teacups, get some success, let it grow slowly. I mean, I'm trying to build a podcast business. I'm working full-time at the Federal Reserve Bank as a talent consultant. Full-time. It's a paid job, good pay. But at my heart of hearts, I want to be in ministry, coaching and guiding and supporting people through podcasting, through coaching, and through writing. And that's my dream. That's where I'm building toward. And I've kind of set myself a 2-year, 3-year target for that. So find out the things that really touch your pulse, the things that give you a buzz. I mean, I do an exercise with people who are wrestling with that. Which I can describe to you if you like, but
Sure.
There are techniques and methodologies you can use that sort of help you get your finger on that pulse to see what's right, what's wrong, what's real, and what contributes to finding your true north. And that's one of the things that I push very hard in my writing and in my podcasting is find your true north. You're not going to find it immediately, but you've got to know where you'd like. Somebody once said, if you don't know where you're aiming, I guarantee you're going to hit it every time. Nothing. So aim small, boil some teacups, and so on. The methodology was created by a Christian guy who actually was one of the founders of a school I taught at in Connecticut, and I didn't even know this until I met him in England, of all places. Go back a step. I'm in the ministry in South Africa. I'm loving it. I'm not a good institutional guy. I like the teaching. I like counseling, not counseling, but more sort of the inspirational public stuff. I'm not a good pastor. I don't hold hands very well. I don't like going to hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. And I left the ministry, came back to the U.S. for family reasons, worked in a Christian school, and did career coaching, career counseling with a university based in Chicago. But in the middle of all this, I'm trying to say to myself is what about the work that I've been doing the past couple of years post ministry do I really love? And the idea of questions like the ones you've already asked, I enjoy motivating people to find new direction. I enjoy seeing the light come on in people's eyes so they know that this is a possible path I can go down. I just need some help to get there. In the middle of in that sort of wrestling and the things that I really was discovering about myself, I got hooked on the whole idea of career guidance, career pathing, the idea of helping people find that, map out that journey and find that what the path is for them. Then, out of the blue, I get a call from my old mentor back in South Africa, who's now moved to England. He says, "We want you to come to England and take up ministry again in a church that needs someone like you." So we left the U.S., we went to England. That position fell away for reasons outside of my control. And I'm sitting thinking, hold on a second. Why did that happen, first of all? Maybe I need to get a real job. But at the same time, in my heart of hearts, I'm saying I still want to help people plug in. I want to help them find meaning, purpose, direction, and just feel good about the path they're going down and give them the tools to do it. So that this book that was written by the guy in Connecticut came across my path, and the book is called The Truth About You. And I read this book and I got hooked on this book, and it talked about a methodology for how you can discover your true north and take you on a journey through a very unique sort of methodology. Well, I thought I want to run career classes for unemployed people through our church in the northwest part of England. That's what I can work a job, but I can do that and really get fulfilled by it. Then I found out through the UK contact with this guy that the author was actually going to be in town near where I lived. So I managed to get an appointment with him, and I'd already designed the materials for the workshops for the unemployed people in different churches, and I really wanted to pitch it to him. I wanted to impress him. I mean, I wanted to show him that I'm really the guy that can take his stuff and really do something meaningful with it. And I was pretty full of myself. And we sat in the Holiday Inn in a place called Leeds in the central UK. And I started to do my pitch. And after about 5 minutes, he kind of almost yawned and cut me off and said, "Stop." And I said, "Okay." He said, "I'm going to ask you a question from my book that is part of the methodology, and I want to see what your answer is." Okay. He said, and I'll describe more in a moment, but he said to me, "Dave, what is your motivational thrust?" And I go, "Huh?" And I knew it was in the book, and I was going to talk about it in my workshops, but I couldn't give it, and I kind of blah, 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 kind of stumbled around, and he cut me off again, and he said, "I know what your motivational thrust is. I know what it is that when you wake up in the morning, that thing that thrusts you forward, that motivates you to live this life and to do what you do. I know what it is. If you don't wake up in the morning changing lives, making the world a better place, impacting the way people see the world and live in this world and feel good about what they do in this world, you're going to be miserable." I felt like he'd nailed me to the chair. He read my heart and mind and dreams all in one go. And he said, "Oh, and by the way, you can use my stuff for your seminars if you want to." Well, that set me off on this journey of what is now, I'm a contributing author to a book called Your Dose of Motivation, which unpacks this, and the workshops and podcasts that I'm developing unfold this. But basically, the methodology is called SEMA. I'm going to explain. System for Identifying Motivated Abilities. How do you do it? Well, he said, well, what you do is, he said, "How old are you?" "Well, whatever age you are, let's go back to your earliest possible memory of success, of achievement, of good feeling that you did something of value. How old do you, look back, how far can you go?" "Well, I was 4. "Okay, fine. What happened when you were 4? "Well, I built something and I was really proud of it." "What did your parents think?" "Well, they thought I was silly." "What did your friends think?" "They thought I was stupid." "What did you think?" "Well, I was proud of it." "Did you build stuff after that?" "Well, no, I kind of got discouraged because everybody thought it was a dumb idea." "What about later on? Did you, when you were 8, I remembered when I was 8, well, I was in a school play, a high school play. What did you like about the school play?" "Well, I liked the applause. I liked the whole idea of being somebody that I'm not." And so essentially, and I said, "Do your friends think you're any good?" "Well, not really. They kind of laughed at me." "But it doesn't matter. And what you do is we do, the methodology is called Recall the Joys. Try to make a list of all the things that happen through different phases of your life that even looking back now, you can say that gives me pleasure, that gives me a sense of satisfaction, that gives me a good feeling. I love telling the story about what I did. Other people may not have seen it that way. Occasionally, the odd aunt or uncle will come along and say, I know what you ought to do when you grow up. You're going to be this and that when you grow up. You'd be really good at this when you grow up. But even when you look back, you say, well, the pattern is there. And we're looking for what motivated you to use your talent and your abilities, the natural things and the learned things that we can look through your life. And if we can find a pattern, then we can begin and see a map or see a journey. Then we can begin to put together next step, another phase, the next phase, where you go with this. Were they learned abilities? Were they natural abilities? Did they come? Was it something that you even if you never got paid for it, you would love to do it anyway? Or is it something, was it, the good one is, was it the process or was it the result? Was it that you had to win or was it you just participated? What was it when you look back that gives you the buzz, the drive, the motivation? And that, when I take people through that methodology, we look at different phases like, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, so on, all the way up through. We begin to recognize that there are things that they've done, said, achieved, or not done that when they look back, they either have regret that they didn't because they really wanted to, or they did it and they got what they wanted out of it, or they did it and wish they could have done more with it. It's those kinds of patterns begin to emerge. And that's where we start to look at drive, purpose, motivation, sense of accomplishment. And the last thing on this, one of the things that I try to do in my fuller version of all this is that I try to get them to define what winning is. What's success? Is winning important? And if so, define it. Does that mean someone has to lose? Does that mean someone has to be beaten? Does that mean are you competing with yourself, or do you have to compete with someone else to be a winner? What is success? Define it. Is there any such, are your accomplishments about win-lose or win-win? And does it matter? How do you see people's participation in your life? Do you see them as a threat or do you see them as a support? Do you like to give more than you receive more? And we began to ask those kinds of questions. And people begin to get a picture of their heart motivation and drive and their direction and the things that sort of push the right buttons for them. And the one thing that Mark Twain always said that I always like to quote is there are two important days in your life. One is the day you were born, and the second is the day you find out why. And that's one of the starting points I use with a lot of the work I do.
But, there was a quote I've read by John Lennon that was talking about how when he was in kindergarten, the teacher asked the students what they wanted to be, and he just said, I want to be happy. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Is that what makes you happy, not necessarily what makes you wealthy or what, gets you the accolades? Yeah.
You see, and from a Christian perspective, if someone says that, so I'll break them into two camps, if you like. From a Christian perspective, I'm trying to help people differentiate between happiness and joy. Happiness, in many people's definition, depends on happenings. If the things happen right, then I'm happy. Whereas joy, that comes from God, if you like, as He implants His life in us, is in spite of happenings, we can still have an assurance, a peace, a rest that allows us to hang in there, keep fighting, and keep walking, keep moving on. But by happiness, in a sense, it is a question that people ask. I just want to be happy. Well, then the definition of happy, is it about things? Is it about possessions? Is it about being right? Is it about winning? Is it about other people losing? Is it about having more than your neighbor? Is it about being better than your brother or sister? Is it about having accolades or praise or recognition or status or privilege? What defines happiness for you? And I try to get people to wrestle with that. And I try to strip away the things that they have no control over, the superficial things, to get down to the heart and the nub of what it is that motivates them to want to do well. One of the keys to all of this is, whether it's happiness that they're looking for or joy, we try to talk about what is your excellence button. What is it that makes you want to do it well, whatever it is? Is it worry about being wrong? Is it to get the reward? Is it because your father's going to punish you if you don't? Is it you're worried about getting a bad grade or you're going to fail in some way? Let's find out what excellence means to you, and does it matter? And now, if some people are just mediocre and they're happy with that. I'm not criticizing them. Don't condemn them. I don't judge them. If they're content with what they would describe, what I would consider to be less than aspirational, that's just because I'm different. And there's certainly a person's definition of happiness is really critical. I know people that have said to me, if all I do is have a chance to sit with kids and hold their hand and do nothing more because they're sick and dying and just be comfort, if that's all I do with the rest of my life, I'm happy. It would make me happy. I know other people that would say, if I'm not going to get a chance to make that commission to buy another car within 3 years, I won't be happy. I mean, I'm not judging one or the other. I'm just saying that I get all types coming, and it's getting them to define what happiness means, which is critical. So without trying to come up with a prescriptive list of, what you do these things and everything will be fine in terms of meaning, purpose, direction, and so on, there are actually 10 or 12 sort of things that I try to get people to focus on, and it varies from person to person. I won't go into detail on them, but just to say that when people are truly wanting to find this meaning, purpose, and direction, and they have come to terms with the fact that I'm perhaps going in the wrong way, heading in the wrong direction, using the wrong car, using the wrong map, it's time for me to stop, have a rethink, turn around, go back, change direction, or get another map altogether. If people are ready, have begun to think like that and ask questions like that, then I tend to guide them down a series of thinking points, and I'll mention them in brief. I can't go into detail with all of them, but there's one of the big things I try to get people to identify is the should be and should do aspects of their life. What are your personal values and foundations? Do you know what you believe, for example, about people? Do you believe people are fundamentally good? Do you believe that people can change? Do you believe that given the right soil that people can grow? But what in a sense, from you personally, what should I do? What should I be in order for me to be happy? I have to come to terms with my personal values and foundation. And therefore, that affects the way I view my career. There are other things, the must-be's and the must-do. For me to truly have true sense of purpose, I must define what it is that, I guess the better way to put it, internal drivers, the things that, another way we talk about it is my heart gravitational pulls, the things that pull me. I have, in a sense, I have no choice. I must do this. I must be this. It's that kind of inner drive that I try to help people identify. And then there's another one, which is I shouldn't be, and I shouldn't do this. And one of the things that when we look at a thing called career derailers, the things that take you off track, we approach it from the point of view of what are your Achilles heels? When you've gone on your journey in the past, when you've tried this job, when you've made a move in this career direction and it failed, was it because of some weakness in yourself? Was it a mistake that you made? Was it you made the wrong assumptions? You took something for granted? You messed up, and it happens a lot in your life. Well, I try to help people to look at their Achilles heels, for example. My Achilles heel is I'm performance driven. And I have very high standards for myself. And if I don't deliver it well, I beat myself up for days. I'm my own worst enemy. And people will come to me months sometimes later after I've preached or after I've done a training session or spoken at a conference and I felt I did badly. The thing that has been so wonderful, not always, but enough times for me to be appreciative. In the depths of my soul, people will come back months, sometimes years later, and say, when you spoke on that subject, it changed my life. And yet my Achilles heel was, you're kidding, right? There's no way I could have touched anybody's life with that. That was a mess. But yet God used it to get through or to bless somebody else. The fourth one is, what are the things I can do and I can be? This is the God-given, but also natural, learned, unique skills and abilities that we have as part of growing up. I can do that. I can be that. There's a joke cartoon I have in one of my articles. Two little kids are sitting playing around a train track, and one boy says to the other, "What are you going to be when you give up?" And as opposed to, what are you going to be when you grow up? Because the whole idea, the whole world is conspiring against you to be what you want to be, what you can be, what you want to be. But we've got to identify what are the good natural talents that we have. I personally am hopeless at fixing things. I have never been able to pick up a tool and do anything sensible with it. My kids see a tool in my hand and they run for their lives, or they start making jokes, or they go to the neighbors and they say, "Dad's trying to fix something. Would you like to come and watch? We're charging admission." It's really that bad. And my wife will fix stuff, amazingly can fix stuff. She's doing cross stitch of 80,000 stitches, 300 colors, while at the same time managing a department at Walmart. I couldn't be or do that. And so I have the utmost, but that said, ask me to organize a training course, online training course for 15,000 people in five countries, I'm good. And she looks at it and she goes, I have no idea what you do. Another one is that I help people look at is the want to be, the want to do. That's when you've got the skill, but inside you've got this aspiration as well, this heart, this dream, this hope, and it's trying to help them bring the two together when aspiration combines with skill. If it could happen, what would you want to be? What would you want to do? Number 6, ready to be, ready to do. Well, that's a timing thing. You could be saying to your boss at work, "I'm ready to be, whatever, a new manager, a new director, lead a new team, or take on a new project." But their perception of you is you're not ready. I've got the motivation, I've got the determination, I've got the skill, but the timing's all wrong. The company can't use me to do that right now. The life situation, I want to be something else that I'm not doing now in my ordinary job, but from my family's perspective, I can't do that. I would love to be a writer. I'd love to be an international conference speaker. I would love to coach and counsel and pastor people all over the world, but I can't. I've got a kid in college. He's got to finish one more year. Now, okay, 2 more years, and then I'm finish his master's degree. Now I can start maybe doing what I want to be, what I want to do when I can get past that. Then there's that was ready to be, ready to do. Then there's this meant to be, this meant to do aspect. And I call it your purpose epiphany. It's when that light comes on that says, I'm meant to be doing something else. I'm meant to be something else. And then there's this other part of us that's, and many people are like this. It's the willing to be, willing to do. When there's no plan B, there's no one else to do it, and you're needed, you step in and do it. That's you. Then there's other things, and I won't go into all the details. You absolutely will not do. There's some things where you won't compromise. I won't, for example, work in a cigarette factory. Just won't. Can't do it. My parents both died of cancer from smoking. I won't in any way contribute to the creation of something like that. That's just one example. There's another one, care to be, care to do, care and do. Even it's something that taps in that empathy thing, translates into action. Then there's the dream to be, dream to do. Oh, if I could only use all of my God-given gifts, skills, and tools, I would be just the happiest. I'd be a pig in mud. That would be fantastic. And then, of course, and the last one I talk about is trying to find your true north, where we get the compass together. We put those 11 things, if we've got them all, into some sort of a plan where people can begin to say, well, that's it. Let's not boil the ocean. Let's take one step at a time, but let's have a plan. And I'm there to support them as they take their first steps in there with their new map. So all those kind of things that kind of factor into it. And one of the big components, which we've already talked about, is recall the joys. Look back on the things that even now, I'm 70 years old, I look back at when I was 8, and I still today will say I got an acting award as an 8-year-old in a high school play. Yeah, man, I loved it. I loved being in front of an audience, Uh, and everybody else says you're just a showboat and a show off, and you like to tell jokes and stories. Well, yeah, I can't do that for a living exactly right now. But when I look back on my history, it's those moments in time that really do things in my heart and mind and give me that buzz that says, I would love to do more of that if I have the chance. Okay. Sorry, I've rambled.
Yeah, and I like the story of the teacups as opposed to trying to grab the whole ocean, because you see so many things where they want to sell you a program like, we can get you $1 million doing whatever, you writing or podcasting or this or that, and a lot of times you kind of wonder if it's just baloney. But it's like, it's just more a matter of going one step at a time and working through it, that there's no magic bullet.
Well, yeah, yeah, and also to help people not to become concerned or frustrated or angry or bitter or discouraged because you took 2 forward and took 2 back. Well, come on, at least you're taking 2 forward. Somebody once said that there's no harm in if you sit still too long, you're going to get run over. True, But on the other hand, if you've decided to start on a journey, at least you've started. And if you've got somebody beside you who supports you in your dream or is encouraging you in your hopes, taking those 1 or 2 steps. Okay, you've had a setback. Let's try again. I'm not trying to be this sort of Pollyanna, everything will be all right, and just God sees everything, and therefore He will bless you no matter what you do. Well, no, we're the victim of our own choices. We mess ourselves up quite well. And God is there to pick us up and dust us off, and He's got a lot of grace and a lot of power. But at the same time, we've got to prayerfully, humbly unite with someone, with others, to sort of help us find that journey. I love the idea of helping people go on that journey, and discover that one next step that's just going to, without boiling the ocean, that one next teacup. That's for me is the joy. That's where my joy comes from. Finding that one next step. I'm just looking at a quote here on my screen. The great Michelangelo said it actually. The greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but it's too low and we reach it. Now, I'm not saying Michelangelo is the best thing since sliced bread when it comes to spiritual quotations. I'm just saying that make a start. Let's aim a little higher. Let's go a little bit further. Let's not dream too big, but let's be realistic. 1 teacup at a time, and let's go for it. I'm a great believer in the I hate to say that, I don't say it easily to people because I'm an A-type personality, and I kind of have that drive, motivation, and push type style. But I do know that doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. If I continually doubting that there is even a journey for me to go on, if I continue doubting that there's a God that can walk alongside me, the word for comforter, for the Holy Spirit is come along, the one who comes alongside. He's there. He's decided to get in us and change us from the inside out. He will cause us to walk in His way. Don't doubt His love. Let's start small. You messed up, make another step. Let's get up again. He'll dust you off, clean you off, forgive you. Let's move on. There's a dream, there's a hope, there's a mission, there's a purpose. He'll be with us in that. But that's the beauty of Christian fellowship too. But that's getting off onto another subject.
How do you actually, if someone is a person of faith, how do you actually incorporate a lot of that into it? when a person wants to have meaning and purpose in their career and their day-to-day living, and they want God at the center, what
As a
kind of
person of
things?
faith.
Yeah. What do you usually tell them to
Um,
do?
one of the things that I'm finding more these days, uh, you know, the church is really good at, and bad, in my opinion, painting this big picture that God wants to transform the world. He does. I believe that. I think he wants to restore his image in the world. He wants wholeness for the world. Shalom, which is much more than the absence of war. It's wholeness, body, mind, soul, spirit. The Greek equivalent in the New Testament is sozo, which is salvation, body, mind, soul, spirit, relationships, environment, socially, financially, getting our priorities aligned with him, and on and on. And in the end, the whole earth will be filled with the glory of God. Well, I love it. I preach it, believe it. But when it comes to the rubber hitting the road and practical day to day, I kind of pop that bubble or that balloon, whatever the right metaphor is. One of the things that I found works best, and again, it sounds a bit like a technique, but with a bit of practice, I guess. Number one, I try to help people discover how they are wired. And this exercise that I've just been through is looking at your natural and spiritual DNA, if you like. What drives me, motivates me, what makes me tick? And if God is in the equation, and I have invited him in to transform me and change me from the inside out, and to help me become what he wants me to be, well, then that's a great start, of course. But then there's the other thing. There's the natural things of my life that I was born with, that I can discover: strengths, skills, abilities, and talent. And somehow we need to come to a point, a person of faith. I try to bring them to a point, and I bring myself to this point. I can't say every day, but it's my intention to do this every day. And I use this illustration every day, consciously, deliberately. Make it a conscious choice to do this, and you're going to have to discover what it means for you. But hang a sign around your neck. And if your heart's got a neck on it, if your neck's got a heart on it, on that sign it says, under new management. Today, I am putting myself under your management. Today, I'm surrendering. Today, I'm telling you, I don't know how to live my life. Today, I know what I'd like to do, but I want to make sure it aligns with what you want me to do. And I have to discover what it means to say, not only do I want what you want, there's a great verse in Psalm 37, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. And in many translations, it says, delight yourself, put him first and he'll give you what you want. Well, there's a big difference between what I want and what I need. I want happiness, but I need joy. I want stuff, but I need to give away more rather than get more. But the beauty of hanging that sign around our neck is, when it comes to our life and our career and our calling, our desire for purpose, under new management today, I will delight myself in you, Lord. I will choose today, whatever it costs, whatever it means, whatever blunt force trauma you have to provide to my heart and head, I will choose to want what you want. Give me the want to factor. Give me that want to want what you want. And start there. I'm available to you today if you want me to do something for someone else, to be a word, a hand, a gesture, a kindness, healing, comfort, peace for someone. If you want me to be that, then I'm available. I'm under new management. The sneaky thing that God does, in my opinion, is that when we say, I delight myself in you, I put you first for my life today, just today. Let's just do today. Let's not boil tomorrow's ocean. Let's just do today. I want what you want today. If our attitude and our heart is even that much right, he's sneaky in that he puts what he wants in our hearts. We begin to want what he wants. It's a progress. It takes time. It's an evolutionary thing. Not that I believe in evolution necessarily, but it's growth. But if we can begin, and Just this morning, again, I said to the Lord, I'm yours today. I'm under new management today. I'm available to you today. If you want me to open my mouth and speak for you, I'm yours. You want me to write an email? I'm yours. If you want me to be clear about to help somebody else discover clarity, purpose, meaning, direction for their life, I'm yours. I'm going to be meeting with Jay later today. If you want me to say something, I hope God make it possible that if I will say something that will touch a life, if that's what you want. But all things considered, the only thing that I want for myself today is I want the Yankees to win the third game against Los Angeles. That's all I want, So let's be clear about that, Lord. I'm joking. So anyway, want what he wants, hang the sign around our neck, but let that be part of the teacup philosophy, if you like. I want what you want. I know I'm a new Christian. I'm 50 plus years in this business. So, but if you're brand new, discovering what he wants, he may say, what I allowed yesterday, I don't allow today. That dream, that hope, that desire, that course you want to go on, go with your gut, go with your heart, go with your instincts. If there's no peace, then it's probably may not be a good thing. Find somebody who can be your sounding board to suss it out and decide whether this next step is the right one for you. So that's one of the principles that I'm using more and more. Discover your spiritual DNA and your natural DNA, but at the same time, want what he wants. Delight yourself in him. He'll put his desires in your heart. You'll discover over time that you're actually beginning to think differently and feel differently and wish and dream differently.
Well, and part of it is maybe a realism too, that, you've got thousands of speakers, teachers, pastors, and things that are doing wonderful things, but they're not transforming the world individually. That we sort of have to have a realism that we can transform what God gives us. We can take on as many teacups as we can, but the ocean's going to be won not by one person, but by many, and that we can't expect that we're just going to change the world ourselves.
Amen, Jay. No, and another podcast I did a couple of years ago was on the subject of the church has left the building. If we're going to adopt and I'm going to get on a hobby horse here for a moment, if we adopt a position as the church, we're going to have a big meeting where we've got a performance, we got a performer, we've got a good band, we've got nice atmosphere, we got great music, and we got a big crowd. Come on into our building, come on in here so that we can change you, so that God can change you. I'm trying to say, well, hold on a second. Can't we get off our pews and our backsides and our knees and go out and be an answer to our own prayers? Go out and be friends with the world, not friends and do things the way they do, but go out and be an answer to the prayers that many of them have that they may not express. Let's get out of the building. Don't come in here. Yeah, come in, celebrate if you like, but the church has got to have a mindset, in my opinion, where we're taking his answer, his restoration, his wholeness message out to the world. I'm going to share just one quick story just to illustrate that. And I'm not saying I do this right, Jay. I'm just sharing personal stuff. I was working in Washington, and I'm coming home every fourth or fifth weekend back to Missouri. And I'm tired. And it's a 2-hour, 15-minute flight from D.C. to St. Louis. And that morning, as I've joked before, as I foolishly said, okay, Lord, I'm available today. I'm under new management. I'm available. And then when I got on the plane, I got a nice window seat, cuddled up next to the window, said, I've got a 2-hour nap coming. This is going to be good. And two people were sitting next to me. Lady was sitting in front of me. And we reached cruising altitude just when I was really beginning to drop off to sleep. And the lady in front of me put her seat back a bit too abruptly. And she turned around and looked between the seats to me. She said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I said, hey, don't worry. God bless you, dear. Don't worry. And it was nothing. So a few minutes later, I'm starting to nod off to sleep again. The guy taps me on the shoulder, the guy sitting next to me. And he said, can I ask you a question? I said, okay. And he said, are you a born-again Christian? I said, why would you ask that? And I said, first of all, I'd like to know your definition of what you think that means, but why are you asking it? He said, well, when she put her seat back and said, apologize, you said, God bless you. I said, I did? She could have sneezed. And I said, God bless you. It was that simple. He said, no, you said God bless you, and you meant it. I said, well, I guess, yeah, I would love God to bless her. Okay, back to the question, are you a born-again Christian? I said, you give me your definition, and I'll tell you if I am. He gave his idea of what he thought that meant. He'd heard of it somewhere, and it was on TV or something. And I said, well, okay, you've just described, yes, let me clarify a couple of things. And I told him my own story, a bit of my own personal story. And I said, but I guess that adequately describes the journey that I have begun. I've been able to I was given a new birth and I've began a new journey. And we talked for a good 15, 20, 30 minutes. And after a little bit of time, the guy sitting next to him interrupted us. And he said, I've been listening to the two of you talk. And he said, I've just finished Bible school and I'm trying to find where God wants me. What is the purpose for my life? And I go, oh no, no, so much for the nap. There's nothing going to happen here. And I ended up sharing with both of them about how to do some of the things you and I've talked about now to discover how God is intentionally, proactively, totally unconditionally, lovingly committed to helping us find meaning, purpose, and direction for our lives, to transform us, get inside us and transform us from the inside out, and to help us walk with him under new management and find meaning, purpose, and direction. And I went away thinking, all I said this morning was I'm available, I'm under new management. And that's what happened. And that has happened to me in airports, places all over the world over the past 10 or 12 years. It's been really quite special to see how God will honor that and give me the opportunity to share. And I know many other people have the same thing. I don't know why I got onto that subject. You set me up for that, and I don't know why.
So, in terms of a final message, what would you like to leave the audience with? One final message.
He will not quit on you. Your dreams are safe with him. You got a dream, you got a hope, you got a sense of purpose, you want to discover meaning and direction and do something valuable and important with your life, and you're afraid to sort of take that step toward that dream. Just rest assured that if you place a trust in him, even if you don't have a personal relationship, you don't have a personal faith at this point, take a risk, take a chance, take a step to trust him to be proactively involved and willing to be engaged in giving direction and meaning and purpose for your life. He will not quit. He will not quit. If you open the door this much, he will honor you. He will respect that. He will enter, shine his light in, and give you that kind of hope and that sense of direction that you're looking for. Your dreams are safe with him. Your dreams truly are safe with him. That's the only thing that I share that with young people and old alike. So that's it for me.
What do you try to actually share Christ with people as you're teaching, finding meaning and purpose in a general sense? Even when you're like got secular clients, you ever try to share a little bit?
No, I have two versions, if you like. You and I've kind of blended the two. That said, on the one subject, which is a very popular subject that I've consulted and trained and coached on, is servant leadership. It's a very popular trend in businesses all over the world now to have servant leadership, pushing people up, empowering people. It's under the title of servant leadership. And it's interesting that when I've done this with executives and managers in many different countries, I talk about servant leadership with one group that's non-Christian, and I don't put in Bible references. But when I do it with Christian leaders, it's exactly the same stuff. I only just have Bible verses. And I find that they, and I have often shared with the group that's not in a Christian environment, that I have Bible verses for this, but that's not the place we're in right now. And yet people will come to me afterwards and say, well, share with me those Bible verses because I would like to try to harmonize them. But the stuff that we've talked about today, that list of 12 things, it's almost 100% non-Christian version of that. But at the same time, tapping into the idea that God does place talent within us. We have got God-given ability. He can give us a sense of direction. And he wants to do that. That's something special, to tap into those hidden qualities and give us that gravitational pull thing that I mentioned. And so I do mention it, but I do two versions of that completely. And very, very often in the past 5 or 6 years, 10 years maybe, after I've shared on the non-Christian version of organizational development, leadership development, communication skills, pick a subject, people will come to me afterwards and want to know my Christian story. I don't know if it's something that comes out, but I don't overtly mention it at all.
Where can people reach you if they want to get in contact with you?
Well, on Facebook, it's AuthenticChristianManager.com. I have a website called www.AuthenticChristianManager, one long word.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, just David Lutes. And in there's a collection of some of the stuff that I've written, some of the things that I've done, podcast links and so on. But LinkedIn, David Lutes, AuthenticChristianManager.com, or just AuthenticChristianManager@gmail.com. That also works.
Yeah, well, thanks for being on.
And if you want to find the book, I've got a book called Your Dose of Motivation. It's not mine alone, but I'm one of the contributing authors. That's on Amazon. Your Dose of Motivation.
Okay. Yeah, well, thanks for being on today.
My honor and pleasure. Really is. Thank you.